Hospitalized? What are you talking about?
You just don't want to cook dinner, do you? Don't make excuses.
These were the words I was told by my husband and mother-in-law. I was on the way to the hospital because of labor. My mother-in-law called me numerous times. I had no choice but to head back home with pain. My husband and mother-in-law didn't seem to care that I was about to go into labor. I arrived back at my parents-in-law's house, but I collapsed and was carried to the emergency room. Even though both my husband and mother-in-law did not seem concerned about me, I had been patient so far. However, I decided to make a move, thinking that I could no longer be a family member with these people. I am Kate, 33 years old. I work in an office and I'm currently on maternity leave. My husband David and I got married 2 years ago. He is the same age as me and we met at a speed dating party. When I saw him for the first time, he was not my type, but he was very easy to talk to. I was extremely shy. I have been to so many speed dating parties, but I was so nervous that I could not open up in a short time. But I was able to enjoy talking with my husband from the very beginning. I exchanged contact information for the first time that day. We went out for dinner several times after that, and the conversation was as lively as when we first met. The time passed quickly each time. We seemed to share the same taste in food, and we were able to go to the restaurant together, which would have been difficult for me to do it by myself. I couldn't wait for the weekends when I could see my husband. We decided to become a couple after a few times of our meetups. After a year of dating, we decided to get married. In the early days of our marriage, I enjoyed talking to my husband as much as I did when we were dating. I would hurry to finish work and go straight home because I wanted to talk to my husband as soon as possible. Eating dinner and talking about the things that happened during the day was my favorite part of the day. Every day I felt so happy. Although there was one thing I didn't like about being married. It was the dinners at my parents-in-law's house. Every weekend, we go to my parents-in-law's house. I cook dinner and we all have dinner together. My parents-in-law's house is about an hour's drive from ours. I don't like my mother-in-law. She's usually kind, but I don't know when she starts to get angry. Once I make her angry, she would verbally abuse me. When I went to greet them before marriage, everything went peacefully from start to finish. I arrived at their place in the early afternoon, but it was in the evening when I noticed. You should eat dinner too. I'm going to cook a feast for you. My mother-in-law suddenly said to me. I felt bad for her to cook dinner for me, so I said, No, it is okay. Please don't bother about me. I'm telling you to eat. She said it in a loud voice. I was so surprised that all I could do was apologize. My husband did not defend me, and while we were waiting for the food, he accused me.
Why did you say no to her earlier? Don't you feel sorry for my mother?
I was so confused because he seems to be a different person from what I knew. It was my father-in-law who resolved the tension.
Where are you from, Kate?
He asked me a question when he saw me puzzled. Later, after the meal was ready, my mother-in-law acted very upset, and my husband seemed to be angry with me too. It was awkward, but my father-in-law asked me a lot of questions and made the situation more comfortable. When I was talking to my father-in-law, my mother-in-law and husband, who had been silent at first, started to join in the conversation. So eventually, we were able to enjoy the meal together. My husband never said anything to me after we left. Although, even after that, my mother-in-law often gets angry and my husband always takes her side. Each time, my father-in-law helped me out.
I'm sorry that she's a short temper. You don't have to worry about it, okay?
He sneaked up on me and said to me, I get nervous every time we go to the weekly dinner. I worry if I make my mother-in-law upset. Even though I'm being careful, my mother-in-law gets angry. When I get home, I'm exhausted. That's why I don't feel like going there. But I put up with it as my husband looks forward to it every week.
For the dinner party, what are you going to cook this time?
I love my husband when we are alone at home, but I don't like him much when we are at my in-laws' house. Then one day, I found out I was pregnant. The morning sickness was so bad that I even took days off from work.
Are you okay? Call me right away if you have any problems.
The morning of the day I missed work, my husband went to a convenience store to buy something I could eat. He said kind words to me and I left for work. It was hard, but my husband was kind, so I felt better. That week, I was not feeling well and could not go to work. When I cooked, the smell made me sick, so I thought it was impossible to have a dinner party on the weekend. I thought my husband would feel the same way, but he said,
Take a good rest today so we can go to the dinner party tomorrow.
in the morning before he left for work. Well, I think I can't make it tomorrow. The smell of the food would make me sick. I refused the dinner party for the first time since we got married. Then, my husband got furious and said,
What are you saying? My mother looks forward to it every week. You promised we would go to announce your pregnancy. Bear it for just one day.
It was the first time I had seen my husband get angry besides at my in-laws. I wondered if the dinner party was that important. We had talked about going there to announce the pregnancy, but that was before the morning sickness got this bad. Sorry. I was too sick to talk back. I apologized, trying to calm my husband's anger. He left the house without saying anything. I was a little emotionally unstable, so I couldn't stop crying in bed after that. That night, he came home from work, and he was the same kind of husband he always was. The next day, we went to my parents-in-law's house. On the hour-long drive, I felt sick many times and had to take breaks. My husband was worried about me, but he never suggested to turn back home. We bought some food and arrived at my in-laws. Welcome! My mother-in-law happily came to greet us at the door. Before cooking dinner, we told them about the pregnancy. Oh my gosh! Congratulations! I want a boy! My mother-in-law was very happy.
Take care of yourself and have a healthy baby.
My father-in-law also said that. My husband was happy to see his parents pleased. I was happy that they were happy too, but I was sick. I could barely make a fake smile. After that, I felt sick so many times while cooking. I sat down to take a break and cook, wearing a mask to avoid smelling the food. I heard my husband and mother-in-law talking happily, even without looking at me. My father-in-law noticed that I was not feeling well and came to the kitchen.
Morning sickness? You are here to report your pregnancy? I'm sorry to make you cook when you're not feeling well. You don't have to do it next week. Does this supposed to go on this plate?
He said and helped me with the dishes. I was so happy that I almost cried. I wished my husband had said the same words to me. My mother-in-law didn't seem to care at all when my father-in-law helped me. When the meal started, I was too sick that I couldn't eat. Kate, why don't you eat? My mother-in-law asked me. I could only answer, I'm sorry, my morning sickness is so bad. And then, if you don't eat, your baby won't get any nutrients. Eat even if you don't want to. She said with a very scary face. My husband also said,
That's right. Stop making excuses and eat.
I tried to force myself to eat, but after taking a bite, I ran to the bathroom. We are eating! That is gross! I heard my mother-in-law's angry voice outside. I couldn't stop crying. I don't know how long I was in the bathroom. When I finally felt better and came out, my mother-in-law calmed down. My father-in-law must have said something to her. I was grateful to my father-in-law, but disappointed that my husband did not show single concern. After that, no matter how bad my morning sickness was, dinner parties were held every week. I wanted to refuse many times, but I knew my husband would be furious, so I couldn't say anything. One day at one of the dinner parties, we reported that we were having a girl. My mother-in-law said, "Oh, I wanted a boy." She was not angry though.
I know, I'm sorry.
For some reason, my husband apologized to her. I did not understand why he was apologizing. My dissatisfaction with my husband continued to grow. Although he is kind at home, everything started to seem like a lie. However, I had no choice but to put up with it when I thought about the baby I was carrying. Every day, I wished only that this child would be born safely. The baby was growing steadily, and I entered the last months of pregnancy. The baby could be born any time now. I had prepared my belongings so that I could be hospitalized at any time. But the weekly dinner parties were still being held. On the morning of the dinner party, I had contractions. The intervals were still long, so I did not need to go to the hospital yet. But I wasn't sure when I had to. "I had contractions. I won't go no matter what you say today," I told my husband in a strong tone. I thought it was more important to have the baby safely than not to make him angry.
Screw you! You're looking fine. I will take you with me even if I have to pull you.
My husband got very angry, as I expected. "I won't go no matter what you say today. What if something happened to the baby?" For the first time in my marriage, I talked back to my husband. While I was talking back, a contraction came and I crouched down.
Enough! I will go by myself.
My husband said and left. He didn't seem to care about me crouching, but I thought it was better than being forced to go with him. About an hour after he left, I decided to take a cab to the hospital as contraction got frequent. When I just got into the cab, I noticed that my mother-in-law had called me. I looked at my phone and saw dozens of incoming calls. "Hello?" I gathered all my strength and answered the phone. "Come home quickly and cook dinner now!" She yelled at me as soon as I picked up the phone. "I'm on my way home to the hospital for labor pains," I told her. But there was no way she could understand. "Hospital? What are you talking about?" From the other end of the phone.
It's just a stomachache. You just don't want to make dinner, do you? Don't make excuses.
I heard my husband's voice. "Come straight home now." The mother-in-law did not stop. "Okay, I understand." I had no choice but to obey. I was so ashamed of myself. I couldn't stop crying from pain, anger, and sadness. The cab driver was puzzled when I told him to change the destination. I managed to arrive at the house and went inside, feeling dizzy. I couldn't stop sweating. As soon as I arrived, my mother-in-law and my husband started yelling at me. But I honestly don't remember what they said. I think I was dazed. I did hear my father-in-law calling for an ambulance. The next thing I knew, I was in the delivery room at the hospital. I was still in a daze because of everything that had happened. I was desperate to deliver my baby. When I heard the baby's voice, I lost all strength in my body. "It's a healthy girl." When the obstetrician told me that and I saw my daughter's face, I cried with relief. After delivering the baby, my father-in-law came into the room. He said,
I'm glad she was born safely. Congratulations, you did a great job.
I said. "You called an ambulance for me, didn't you? Thank you." My husband was not there. When I noticed, it was dark outside and it was midnight already. I was so tired that I fell asleep. When I woke up, my parents were there.
Congratulations, Kate. I'm so relieved. You're looking great.
I was going to call my parents before going on the delivery, but I did not have a chance to do it. My father-in-law contacted my parents. When I saw my parents' face, I cried and told them about my husband and my mother-in-law.
Why didn't you tell me earlier? I cannot forgive them.
My father was angry, and my mother hugged me as she cried. It must have been hard. You endured a lot. Then my father-in-law brought my mother-in-law and my husband. When my father saw my husband's face, he said,
What were you going to do if something happened to my daughter and granddaughter?
My father yelled at him, but my husband said,
No, the baby was born safely. Of course I care about my child, but I also care about my mother. I think it's Kate's fault for not saying it clearly.
David is right. Family dinners are important. I also didn't know Kate was close to having a baby because she didn't say that clearly. My mother-in-law also said something equally strange. My father tried to grab my husband when he heard it, but I told them, I don't want to hear it anymore. I have to take care of my daughter from today. Please leave. My mother-in-law and my husband shrugged their shoulders and left the room.
I'm truly sorry. I will talk to both of them well.
My father-in-law said and left the hospital room. After that, while taking care of my daughter, I talked with my parents about the future. It seems I had been brainwashed by their constant yelling. When I saw the face of my newborn daughter, I thought I had to be strong. I had to protect her no matter what. My mother visited me every day and stayed with me all day, so I felt relaxed. Then the day came that I was discharged from the hospital. I headed with my parents to the house where my husband was waiting. I asked my father-in-law to bring my mother-in-law too. When we arrived at home, I asked my mother to watch my daughter in a separate room.
Welcome back, Kate. Kate, I am so sorry. I was wrong. Let's 3 of us live together as a family from now on.
My husband solemnly apologized, probably because my father-in-law told him to. The 3 of us, you mean no more dinner parties? I asked.
Of course, if you don't want to go, we won't go.
He replied. I could see my mother-in-law's face turning red after hearing my husband's words. She must be angry. I could tell because I have seen her angry face so many times. She must have hated the fact that my husband was not on her side. I laughed. Then I took the divorce papers out of my bag. I wish I could hear those words before the delivery. The dinner parties are more important than my morning sickness and labor pains, right? Why don't you and your mother continue them? Your mother, whom you love so much, is looking very angry. I will live with my daughter alone. Please don't get involved with me again for the rest of my life. I told my husband with a smile.
I said I was sorry. She's my daughter too.
Yes, he said sorry, so forgive him. David is compromising with you. My husband and mother-in-law said vigorously. Oh, that's what you really think. Did you think that if you apologize, things will go back the way they were before? Don't underestimate me. It can't be fixed. I'm moving out today. Why don't you two just support each other and live together? Then my father-in-law also handed the divorce papers to my mother-in-law.
That's it. You two live together without me. I can't believe what you did to Kate, even though you have experienced David's birth. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't come home and called the ambulance.
The day my father-in-law was working on his day off and had gone to work in the morning, and when he returned home in the afternoon, my husband and mother-in-law were yelling at me as I was crouching. If my father-in-law had not come home, I don't know if I would have been able to give birth safely. He felt he could not live with them anymore after seeing them show no remorse even after the birth. Divorce? What are you talking about?
I can't live with you guys anymore. The same goes for Kate. You two can't even understand that, can you? You two are helpless.
My husband and mother-in-law were speechless when my father-in-law said that. Then my father came in with cardboard boxes. He rented a truck. I packed my belongings with my father and my father-in-law and carried them to the truck. My husband and mother-in-law were saying something, but I ignored them. After I finished carrying all of my stuff out, I said to my husband, "Don't you write divorce papers? In that case, my lawyer will contact you." I left the house with my parents, my daughter, and my father-in-law. I thanked my father-in-law, and we headed back to my parents' house. Later, the divorce was successfully finalized through the lawyer. I was able to get plenty of alimony. My father-in-law also got divorced and sold his house. My father-in-law told me that my mother-in-law and my husband, who were in such good relations, were now blaming each other and fighting every day. He said,
"It would be impossible for them to live together."
"My mother-in-law has been a housewife since she got married, so she has almost no work experience. She has no choice but to rely on her son. My husband had very little savings, so after paying alimony, he barely has any money left. He's not sure if he can pay the rent because he needs to pay child support every month. They tried to rely on my father-in-law, so my father-in-law changed his cell phone number so they would not contact him. I raised my daughter at my parents' house. My father-in-law and I still keep in touch. Once a month, he comes to visit our house with a gift for my daughter. My parents also love my daughter very much and spoil her as much as they can. My daughter's smile and happiness make me happy.